Welcome into the Ochsner Health Podcast studio here on Veterans Memorial Boulevard for this edition of NewOrleans.Football. Even though it's the bye week, we're still hitting y'all with y'all fix of daily Saints content. We're going to continue to break down the Saints' win over the Cleveland Browns. Our show is presented by PJ's Coffee. If you want to get anything sweet, whether it's coffee or some type of pastry, make sure you hit up PJ's. And right behind us is Matt Bowers Ford, who is also a proud sponsor of our program. Look, come on down to Vets, get you a ride, whether it's an F-150, a Mustang, a Bronco, whatever you want, Matt Bowers has. We'll hit a quick break, and when we come back, we'll continue to break down that game.
Ochsner Health is proud to team up with the NFL and the New Orleans Saints' Crucial Catch mission to fight cancer and save lives. Crucial Catch helps more people access the tools they need to catch cancer early and promotes prevention and early detection of cancer.
Rouse's Markets is voted best grocery store in New Orleans, best grocery store in Baton Rouge, Mississippi, Gulf Coast, Thibodaux, Houma, Hammond, Lake Charles, Mobile, year after year. Thank you for choosing us best grocery store on the Gulf Coast. Number one. Thank you.
Thank you.
The number one grocery store
In Mississippi, Alabama,
Louisiana. 1 million customers a week can't be wrong. Welcome to Rouse's.
The NewOrleans.Football show is proudly presented by PJ's Coffee. PJ's Coffee has some of the best drinks that you can find. They have locations all over the city. They have pastries and everything else you need to get your day started. So go check them out. NewOrleans.Football is proudly sponsored by Urban South Brewery, the makers of Paradise Park Lager. I love supporting local breweries, and when looking for a refreshing, easy drinking beer, I always recommend Paradise Park. In fact, I think it might be the best game day beer out there. If you want something a little lighter, try Paradise Light. It's everything I love about Paradise Park with just 96 calories and 2.6 carbs. And if you're looking for a family-friendly place to watch the game, I'd recommend Urban South's Tap Room in the Lower Garden District. They've got 15 TVs, 30 unique beers on tap, and mouth-watering urban smash burgers. The whole family will want to make Urban South their new living room because at Urban South, they take laid back seriously. Looking for the best insurance coverage at the lowest price? Look no further than Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency. They are a local independent insurance agency right here in New Orleans, specializing in home, flood, and auto insurance. Their agents are born and raised in the area and understand our community's unique needs and the homeowners insurance crisis our residents are currently in. At Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, their dedicated team will shop every available carrier in the market, ensuring you get the most comprehensive coverage at the lowest possible price. They know your time is valuable, which is why they work diligently to provide you with the quotes as soon as possible. Why settle for less when you can have the best? Trust Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, to protect what matters most to you. I do. I've been a client of theirs since 2021. When we couldn't find someone to insure our house because of the big oak tree growing over top, Chabert worked until they found someone that would work with us and give us the protection that we need to feel safe in our new home. Call them today at 504-326-6526 or visit them online at Protected by Chabert. That's 504-326-6526. Chabert Insurance, the Earhart Agency, your local insurance experts. Hardhide Ponchatoula Strawberry Whiskey is an 86 proof blend of aged wheat bourbon, American light whiskey, and fresh Ponchatoula strawberries. Blended in New Orleans, it is not for the thin-skinned. Look for it in your favorite stores, bars, and restaurants. NewOrleans.Football is proud to be sponsored by Firehouse Subs. Make sure you check out their location on Veterans Boulevard. Attention Saints fans, don't let pests and termites invade your home field. Trust the team at Red Pest Solutions to tackle those unwelcome visitors. Call the Red Man today for unbeatable pest and termite control. Score peace with no pest. Visit redpest.com, REDDPEST.com. All right, let's get into the show.
Welcome into New Orleans.Football. I'm Brandon Thomas, joined by Mike Triplett. Mike, what you think about the game, man? After sitting down and having to digest it, you think it was a good win?
Of course. I mean, the Saints felt like they were the bottom of the barrel. Yeah. And, we've gotten a reminder over the last 2 weeks. There's some teams in more dire straits than them. Yeah, I mean, it's so conflicting for everybody who's like, all right, so now they're 4-7. They're still going to miss the playoffs. They're just messing with their draft pick. But yeah. I'm telling you, winning feels good. It feels good for. I just published an article right before we started recording the show. everyone in that locker room that doesn't have the value of long-term thinking, this feels good. Like trying to win, they're out there trying to win. They're dancing Club Dove again. It's going to make it easier to come back to work after the bye week again. They can tell themselves, hey, we're only 2 games behind the Falcons in the standings, even though they don't have the tiebreakers for that. When you do this for whatever 8 months out of your year, winning feels better. Winning feels better, and it validates a lot of things they were trying to do, and it makes it feel like if it wasn't for the injuries, they weren't fooling themselves when they thought they had a good team. Now, what's that going to amount to? Unfortunately, that's a little bleak, but it feels better to know you're better than when you look at the Cleveland Browns. You're like, look at that sad sack 2-17. You want to be like, that ain't us, that's them, and they proved that. For this week anyway, it wasn't them.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Let's hone in on the particulars of that game with our first segment presented by Aaron Rose. How did we see the Clint Kubiak offense evolve in Week 11?
Yeah, look, Kevin and I did a segment. I think it was right around the time they fired Dennis Allen. It might have even been the week before, where we were like, all right, this is a lost season. What are the top 3 things we want to watch what's a reason to watch over the last 9 weeks? And my number one was, I want to see what this offense looks like. I mean, we talked about it for 8 months, from February through September. Clint Kubiak and Rick Dennison and John Benton and Andrew Janocko and that whole staff, Keith Williams. And we thought we liked them. We thought we liked their approach to everything. We thought we liked their common sense approach to everything. What they plan to do with Alvin, what they plan to do with Taysom, what they plan to do with Derek Carr, watching it play out on the practice field, watching it play out in weeks 1 and 2. And I was a believer. I was a total believer. And then they lose Eric McCoy, and then they lose Cesar Ruiz, and then they lose Lucas Patrick, and then they lose Derek Carr for a while, and then they lose Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. And I'm like, man, I want to go back to finding out if I like this offense or not. And I'm back to liking this offense again. I mean, it's been since the LA Chargers game where they've been back to running the ball again. So that's 4 weeks in a row where they've been back to running the ball well again. And the creativity came back. I joked during the game that it felt like he put away this whole section of plays while Eric McCoy was gone, and then when Eric McCoy was back, I would say he's in his bag. He had his bag put away until Eric McCoy came back, and I mean it was creative. Look, obviously there's some tricks to keep the offensive tackles out of trouble when you're facing Myles Garrett, and there's a lot of bootlegs and stuff. But I loved watching him. I mean the creativity when you're avoiding Micah Parsons and avoiding Myles Garrett, or back in Atlanta in week 4 when they just had no offensive lineman to work with whatsoever and they have to get rid of the ball quick. The creative ways of doing that have been really impressive. The bootlegs, the screen game, finding out something, kind of introducing something new all the time. Nick had a great film study on it. But obviously they've figured out ways to get MVS involved. They finally opened up the Taysom section of the playbook that we were waiting for all summer. They've been doing great things with Alvin all year. Like, I don't know what's going to happen because they're going to hire a new head coach this offseason unless Rizzi wins a ton of games. And if you hire a new head coach, maybe you don't keep anyone from the staff. But I believe in this offensive staff. I think they should have a job in the NFL next year, if not here, somewhere else. And I believe in the core philosophies of this system, as we always did, the Shanahan system, for sure.
It's definitely a dynamite system. Like, just even seeing the way, outside of Kubiak, people like Rick Dennison have taken the offensive tackles and, like you said, schemed them up to protect against Micah Parsons, Myles Garrett, Tank Lawrence, different players like that. It's incredible to kind of see that. But you can really see how during the weeks when a lot of the key offensive players were hurt, that the offense was not dumbed down, that's the wrong terminology, but simplified in a certain sense because there were too many pieces moving at one time that didn't have enough sweat in actually learning the system all the way through, like through training camp. So to see Eric McCoy come back, to see Derek Carr come back and execute this offense like they have been, to see Taysom Hill have increased touches and just more creativity across the board, it's very impressive to see.
Look, they're not perfect. Nick pointed out some flaws in the run game earlier this year that bit them every once in a while. There's, still the occasional holding penalty, still the penalties that set him back once in a while. I mean, I don't think we're talking about coordinator of the year and future head coach like we were 2 weeks into the season. But I really do think we can now take those 3 weeks of Spencer Rattler playing behind Connor McGovern and Landon Young and, Nick Saldiveri, or then even Nick Saldiveri got hurt. And I'm trying to forget, like, whether, it was Shane Lemieux for a week. Like, those weeks where it was Spencer Rattler and 3 injured starting offensive linemen, I think we can now rule those out as an anomaly and at least base our thoughts on the other 8 games where they're 4-4 now.
Yeah, for sure. Mike, do you see anybody like Bud Means or things like that coming back after this bye week?
I don't know Bud Meads' timetable exactly, but it feels like he would have a chance. I mean, we're not going to see Rashid Shaheed back for the rest of the year. Chris Olave, man, I really got the impression that it was probably the smartest thing to do when it was trending in the direction that he wouldn't come back now. I don't want to say that if the Saints get back to 6-7, that should influence his decision in any way. If the Saints move into a tie for first in the NFC South, you want this to be a medical decision, a long-term health decision, not a where are we in the standings decision. But that has not been completely ruled out for the end of the season. But for the most part, I do think Lucas Patrick should be back pretty soon. They decided not to put him on IR, and now they've got the bye week to help him heal with the foot or ankle injury that had him in a walking boot. So you should have your top 5 starting offensive linemen. Kendra Miller's going to come back from IR. Jamal Williams should be back. I mean, I still think it should be Alvin and Taysom in the run game, but it's really just Olave, Shaheed are the only 2 guys that might not be back for the rest of the season. So this offense will be pretty close to what it was supposed to be, and it was always supposed to be a run-first offense that's built off running the ball and play action. And even if they lose Olave and Shaheed, which would be really, really hard to make up for, every sort of element of the running game should be there.
When I said Rick Dennison, I meant Rick Dennison and John Benton because collectively as a whole, they're all making it happen.
For sure.
But you talk about running and how important it is to run. We saw that in full effect on Sunday. That's going to take us to our next segment presented by Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union. Will we ever see another player like Taysom Hill?
Not like Taysom Hill. I mean, please go back on our website and read the story that I did with him and Matt Ray heading into the Matt Ray is like the sports science coordinator for the Saints, and he tests these guys and all these like scientific ways, their acceleration, their strength, their power. And he said, like, Taysom Hill has broken a couple machines. They measure 10 different categories, and they vary. Like, some are strength, how much you can, like, power squat and power lift. And some of them are speed, what your, like, flat-out 40 time is. And Taysom Hill was, like, top 10 in, like, eight of them and top 20 or top 10 and 9 of them and top 20 in the other one. And he was, like, number 1 in 3 of them by, like, a large margin. No one has his ability to like run the ball, catch the ball, pass the ball with his size and his power. Not to mention that he's 34 years old. But I am shocked that there hasn't been a little bit more copycat in the creativity. Like when Justin Fields was out there this year and the Bears were giving him away, and the only team that took him was the Steelers for a 6th round pick. Like, I'm like, how do teams not want a Justin Fields package?
Right.
You know, it's 4th and 1, and you bring Justin Fields out there to line up in the Wildcat. Like, Taysom Hill is proving the Wildcat still has some uses on, like, 4th and 1 when you're like, all right, try to stop this. And, oh, by the way, if you get too cute trying to stop it and bring your safety down, then it might be a 33-yard touchdown. Like, I can't believe he hasn't kept alive the elements of the Wildcat in certain situations. And the other thing I loved about it was Saints were trying to protect a lead with 2.5 minutes to go, and it sure looked like it was just going to be Taysom from there on out. Like Derek Carr was going to stay on the sideline, and they were probably going to run Taysom 6 times in a row. The only reason they didn't is because he scored on the second play. So I am surprised more teams don't use those elements of offensive strategy, especially since there are so many quarterbacks around the league with running ability. Jaden Daniels coming in the league. Anthony Richardson, who's been benched and gotten his job back. Lamar Jackson, obviously, on his way to another MVP, started his career out doing that. But Taysom specifically, maybe. I mean, there's X-Men all over the population. There's Marvel superheroes that pop up every once in a while. Maybe there'll be one more.
Maybe one more. I don't know, but the thing that when I, was putting it together, I was thinking, I was like, man, I don't know if any coaching staff is going to have the leeway to just create a player like that. And if it doesn't work at first and then you rotate him in different positions, is he going to have the leeway to just even be able to find himself and showcase his athletic ability across the board? Because these stats, these total career stats, all right, quarterback. Initially, I had it as running back and tight end, but it was like, wait, he was
also
running.
Receiver.
Yeah, he was running as a quarterback in the Wildcat. He was receiving as a wide receiver. He lines up in
fullback or tailback or receiver.
Yeah, in so many different places.
And you don't even have the kickoff return yardage on here, and that's a big number too. Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, so he's really a one-of-one type specimen. He's Taysom Hill. Man.
It's interesting that you say coaching staff having a leeway too, and that's a point I was going to make. So I'm glad you brought that up. He used to be seen as a product of Sean Payton.
Yeah,
this one crazy coach had this one crazy idea, and then obviously Pete Carmichael came from that and was familiar with him when he was the offensive coordinator for the first 2 years under Dennis Allen. So when Pete Carmichael finally got fired, well, first of all, when Sean Payton left, and then when Pete Carmichael got fired, both times there was this sort of oh, does that mean the end of Taysom Hill? Oh, is Taysom Hill going to get traded to Denver? As if the only person who would have a vision for Taysom Hill would be Sean Payton or Pete Carmichael. Mm-hmm. Well, one of the most fascinating things of the whole offseason was Clint Kubiak and his staff come in here, and the first thing he does is calls up Taysom Hill and flies to go see him in Utah. Why did I have Idaho in mind? Where does he live? Out of Utah and Idaho, but I think it was Utah. And tells him, "Oh, we want you to be the engine that drives this train." Yeah. And Taysom was so excited by their plans for him that he came and he participated fully in minicamp at OTAs. We see him at fullback. We see him at tailback, both of those positions more than ever. We see him shifting out to tight end. We see him shifting out wide to wide receiver. We still see the plays where he's the Wildcat quarterback. And if he had not gotten hurt, he had the chest injury that held him out of week 3. Then he had the broken ribs that held him out for 3 games in weeks 5, 6, and 7. This was probably going to be more of the norm. This new coaching staff, completely new coaching staff, saw him and couldn't wait to work with him. So it's not just a Sean Payton and a Pete Carmichael thing. These guys almost wanted to use him even more and more creatively than the old guys did.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because a week ago we saw against Atlanta, he popped off, but he got called back by that holding. And I feel like they kind of put it back in the tuck, okay, we know we can get it.
Yeah.
And you went throughout the game. The second half, I didn't totally agree with his lack of usage in the second half, but you got to, I guess, ramp people up when they're coming back from injury and stuff like that. But against Cleveland, I mean, they let that dog off the leash, man. They just let him, let him go. They let him go and they let him do his thing. So
and now we got a bye week, and I think we're going to see more of this to come, really. Yeah. It'd be crazy not to.
It would be insane not to see it because, I mean, the man produces points. He produces points. He produces yards. He has people off balance. Like Rizzy said, he has it to where the defense has to revert to, I think he said vanilla in terms of the way that they play because they don't know where the attack is going to come from. So, I mean, look, Taysom is special, man. Yeah. He's a special kind of. I think over the summer, what I had, Matt, 4.
You did. Credit to you. Nick had. We ranked our top 21 players on the roster. Nick had Eric McCoy at 3. He's been proven
very important.
I think you had Taysom at 3, or maybe it was 4.
Something like that.
But it's hard to argue with. I mean, my argument against it was, man, if you only use a guy 5 times a game, how can he be the 4th best player on your roster? But every time something like this happens, it just makes you scratch your head. He's averaging 7.9 yards a carry again this year. Like keep doing that till it stops working. Wait till that number gets down to 4.4 till you're like, okay. All right, we've done it too much. It's at 7.9 right now. They haven't done it enough.
And man, it's printing yards, man. AK a little bit too, but they're literally out there.
Their plan for AK has been outstanding this year too.
Yeah, they're printing yards out there. Let's move on to the defense and transition into our next segment presented by Shaber Insurance, the Earhart Agency. Cam Jordan, man, it's like,
Yeah.
we didn't know who that guy was the first couple of weeks of the season, but now since Rizzi's came in there and they got Joe Woods calling the defense and different things like that, his usage has elevated so much. So does Cam Jordan's elevated usage, what does it mean for his future?
Yeah, it's interesting. Once he was down to playing 10 snaps a game, which was just 3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
I mean, it felt like, well, obviously he's going to either have to retire or take a major pay cut that matches only playing 10 snaps a game or seek finishing his career elsewhere. A lot of those things are still true. I mean, there's no way he can come back making the $13 million or close to it that he's supposed to make next year. I think he'd have to take a pay cut to stay. And look, we've unfortunately seen it on film. He's not the player he was in his prime. Obviously, he's not. But it's been an awesome reminder that he's still really good at some things, especially when it comes to run defense as a big defensive end and often defensive tackle, that he's good to have in the rotation, that his energy is good to have on the field. And he's just sort of like the ultimate example, the poster child or whatever, of the rejuvenating effect of Darren Rizzi. Like, I think Darren Rizzi's strategy has been as much, I think Cam Jordan can still help us on the field, but I think a motivated, energized, levels dancing Cam Jordan can bring energy all across the field too, and I want him to be a part of it. So it's awesome to see him involved again.
Would love to see them get more sacks to raise his Hall of Fame credentials.
So would he.
I mean, look, for sure. When he got one against Atlanta, I said, man, we're back to this. You know what I mean? But we'll see how that usage translates into sacks and different things like tackles for losses and quarterback hits and things like that. But I really do think Cam wanted to kind of show, hey, I still don't put me on the shelf. I still have some gas left in the tank. And now he's getting the ability to do so.
He was visibly pissed.
Yeah.
The game he played 10 snaps. He was pissed on the sideline. He was pissed in the tunnel afterward. Which is, it's really interesting. I mean, obviously him and DA spent the golden years together. DA got the best years out of Cam's career. When he came back in 16 or 17 or whatever it was, that's when he took off and he started being a first-team All-Pro. So it's not like he doesn't recognize the value of Cam Jordan, but he stopped recognizing the value of Cam Jordan. There's no doubt about it.
You know what I wondered after that first high-intensity game for him? I said, man, I wonder what his recovery looks like because he hasn't played this amount of snaps in a while. So you stack that back-to-back, 80 combined between those two games, 80-plus snaps. Ooh, boy, that's
good time
mileage.
for bye week.
Yeah, that's mileage you ain't seen in a minute. So I'm very interested to see how that recovery is going, and especially going into the bye week. He has a chance to really say, hey, man, I'm retooling this. I'm going to play for the rest of the season.
Total Maintenance is one of the largest locally owned home and commercial service providers in South Louisiana. They were founded in 1980 and serve the greater New Orleans and Baton Rouge markets. And Total Maintenance wants to show some love to our NOF listeners. They have a membership program that gets you 2 tune-up visits for AC and heating, as well as club membership discounts of 15% on all repairs, half off of all diagnostic charges, and 3-year warranties on most repairs for membership clients. This is usually priced at the low price of $24.95 a month per system, but if you tell Total Maintenance that you found them through NOF, they'll lower the price to $20.95 per month per system for as long as you keep the membership active. It will never increase. Total Maintenance has a tune-up special running this summer for $79, down from the normal price of $179. This is a one-time offer for one system only. They also offer a free diagnostic on second opinions on units deemed to be unrepairable, and they offer free estimates for replacements as well as commercial maintenance programs. Services include AC and heating service and replacement, electrical service, plumbing service, as well as generator service and installation. They are Total Maintenance. Find them at tm-ac.com or give them a call at 504-841-3300, or if you're in the Baton Rouge area, 225-480-1000. Martin Wine and Spirits is home to a selection of hand-picked barrel select bourbon, whiskeys, and much, much more. They are family owned and operated since 1946 and specialize in wine, spirits, gourmet food, gift baskets, catering, and tasting events. They have many locations, so they're never too far away. You can check them out in Metairie, New Orleans, Mandeville, and Baton Rouge, or if it's more convenient, you can always shop online. Whether you're a wine novice or a seasoned collector, you'll enjoy the Martin Wine and Spirit experience.
It's good! The Saints score! Saints score!
Score
big with Saints Score. Win up to $100,000. Enter the second chance drawings for cool Saints prize packages. Play Saints Score scratch-offs from the lottery.
Hey everyone, with the holidays creeping up faster than your aunt's fruitcake recipe, I've got something way better to share with you. If you want to look sharp for all those festive gatherings and maybe finally win that Best Groomed at the Family Dinner award, check out the latest masterpiece from Manscaped, the Chairman Pro Electric Foil Shaver. Trust me, it's like Rudolph for your face, guiding you to a smooth, irritation-free shave. Head over to manscaped.com and join the over 11 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by using code NewOrleans for 20% off and free shipping.
There's nothing quite like the feeling of stepping into your dream home. At Jefferson Financial Federal Credit Union, we can help make that dream a reality with a team dedicated to you. When you partner with Jefferson Financial, you do so for the life of the loan. Having a single point of contact when questions arise is invaluable. Our experts are here to guide you every step of the way. There's no better time to invest in your future. Apply online at jeffersonfinancial.org. Federally insured by NCUA. Equal housing lender.
Whether you are a local New Orleanian or a fan in town for the game, get your pre- and post-game fired up at Aaron Rose. Local chaos and local love for the black and gold. Wake up and live with daily drink specials, mimosas, screwdrivers, Bloody Marys, and hot or frozen Irish coffees, all just $3 or $4 between 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Aaron Rose, half a block from Bourbon Street in the French Quarter, 811 Conti Street.
Welcome to the Queen Casino, the crown jewel of entertainment destinations. From the thrill of gaming, where every spin and deal brings you closer to fortune, to the excitement of sports betting, where you can feel the rush of victory. Our spaces and catering menu are perfect for any event. From business meetings to grand celebrations, immerse yourself in our vibrant atmosphere with live music that keeps the party going all night long. Join us at the Queen Casino. Your royal adventure awaits.
Welcome to the Ochsner Health Podcast studio here on Veterans Memorial Boulevard. It is now time for our next segment presented by Urban South. Which remaining opponents are you most worried about? There's 6 games left, so who's high on your list that's like, man, I don't know?
You said opponents. The screen says opponent. Do I have to pick one?
I put 2. That's why I said opponents.
All right. Well, look, it starts with the Rams for me. Mm-hmm. I think an argument could be made that the Rams are the best team left. Commanders and Packers also have a winning record, so those are the 3 real candidates. Buccaneers could be frisky by the end of the year too, once they get healthy. But man, this team has not matched up well against the Rams. Mm-hmm. This team continues to give up those big plays, those explosives. As everything else, Rizzi has turned to gold. He hasn't stopped them from giving up 60 and 70-yard touchdowns all the time. And the Rams are hot right now. Matthew Stafford just threw 4 touchdown passes. He's got healthy Cooper Kupp. He's got healthy Puka Nacua. He's got a healthy Kyren Williams. And even when the Saints won 4 of their last 5 last year, they got torn up by the Rams in the middle of that. It's a team they just have not been able to solve. They don't match up well against. And they're next on the schedule. And so all these good vibes that have come with Rizzi Ball are going to be put right to the test in that game. I mean, obviously at Green Bay, Monday Night Football, December 23rd, possible cold weather, possible snow, a good team that's going to be trying to make it to the playoffs is going to be a tough task. But the Rams are the one that stand out to me as the one who could kind of burst the bubble of all these good vibes that are going on right now.
No, for sure. The Rams is number 1 on my list. That's why I chose more than one, because I knew we were going to go with the same one. But after that, I would have to say the Commanders, just with that energy. Yeah. JD5 coming in here. They've had some ups and downs. I don't think this is going to be a real test of the metal to show, hey, we're a real team. But I do think it's important for the Saints to come out there and really hit them in the mouth and show, hey, yeah, it's right. You can only, hang with teams so long and before we show you kind of what's happening. And also on that list is the Giants. They made a quarterback change this week. They're going with Tommy
DeVito.
Yeah, Tommy DeVito. We had to see DeVito last year, but I think seeing him fresh in the second start of the season, that'll be important to see how they come out against that. But also more importantly for me personally, I'm trying to see Malik Neighbors, kind of what the secondary is going to look like against somebody of his caliber as a receiver, because he's fast, he's strong, he can fly. Where are we at in the secondary? Like, kind of to see where the Saints can stop somebody like him.
That'll be in New York, too, obviously. I don't know what the weather will be like, but it'll be a different atmosphere. The funny thing about the Giants and Raiders is they're dangerous in like the Man, it could take so much wind out of your sails. Like I said, the good thing about these last couple of games is you're still staying above the teams that you like to think are below you.
Right.
Dennis Allen got fired when they didn't put the Panthers in their place. Like, it takes a lot of wind out of your sails if you don't put a bad team in their place. Really good point on Jaden Daniels too. Like, although he hasn't been running quite as much since he got injured. He hasn't been tearing teams apart as much. But for a Saints team that has struggled to tackle all season long, you do worry about how they're going to handle that. That is something that they still have. They did a decent job against Jalen Hurts for the first time in years when they were playing a mobile quarterback. But it'll be really interesting to see if they're able to tackle well enough to face a dynamic athlete at the quarterback position like that.
For sure. All of these games are important for Rizzy. No question. Every time Rizzy steps on the field for practice is important because he's fighting to get this job. And we're going to get into it a little bit later in this show. But I really do think that the Rams is a show of, hey, well, Riz can not only coach against people like Raheem Morris, first-year head coach, and Stefanski, he's okay.
Two-time coach of the year.
But the squad that they have out there, they have, Jameis is almost threw for 400 yards, but he is the backup over there and things like that. But, I mean, to see it against McVay, what he can do.
It's going to be put to the test.
Yeah, for sure. And that's I looked today, that's a 3:05 game instead of a 12, so Rizzy might have to show up earlier to get his routine.
All right. Man, that's true. The routine could be off.
Yeah. We didn't mention the Bucs game. There's no division implications there, but
the Bucs could be trying to win the division at that point. I feel like the Falcons want to lose this division right now.
Yeah, they're trying.
But Falcons already have a guaranteed tiebreaker against the Saints and a guaranteed tiebreaker against the Buccaneers. So those teams are going to have to make up 3 games against them. But I mean, there is a world where that game could matter for one or both teams for trying to win the NFC South. And man, that one doesn't scare me as much. Look, I think the Buccaneers are a better team than their record shows. They were hot at the beginning of the season until injuries bit them. Chris Godwin's not coming back, but Mike Evans is. But, you kind of throw that stuff out the window. Last year, the Buccaneers won the division. The Saints went there kind of licking their wounds and beat them really good in Week 17. That's a place and a team that the Saints traditionally don't seem to fear going up against. So if something is at stake in that game, I'm probably going to bet on the Saints.
For sure. I mean, hey, go with the hot hand in a certain sense.
Poor Raiders. Derek Carr revenge game.
Oh,
the
man,
one game we haven't talked about. That team's reeling right now.
Yeah, he about to put the blades on, man. It's gonna be tough to watch. That's right before New Year's, so close out the year on a good note. Hopefully, I think they have a real great shot of winning that game because they don't even know who their quarterback is going to be. They go from O'Connell to Minshew to O'Connell.
Is it Ritter now?
Is it Desmond Ritter now?
Ritter now?
Oh man, we know what that looks like. They're all over the board. But let's transition to our next segment, looking into the future. Which position group is set up the most for future success? Now, we got a chance to see a lot of depth at position groups throughout the season due to injuries. So, man, it's tough to see because they were losing all of those games. But which position group is set up the most for the future?
What do you mean future? Beyond this year or for the rest of this season?
No, beyond this year.
Yeah. Man, it's a shame because there were 2 that we felt great about. And now I don't feel as good about it. Wide receiver was one for sure.
Yeah.
Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed and their injuries have really called that into question, not to mention the fact, we had A.T. Perry in that group at the beginning of the year, and that didn't develop. Mm-hmm. The obvious need to add to that position group with an X receiver, a true physical presence on the inside. I like Olave and Shaheed as assets, but I do worry about them more than I did at the beginning of the year. And then the other is corner, where they had Marshawn Lattimore, always felt like he could be traded, but they still had Paulson Adebo, Alontae Taylor, and Kool-Aid McKinstry. Well, Adebo gets hurt. We don't know if he's going to be back.
Yeah.
Taylor's getting his chance as the number 1 outside receiver. He hasn't immediately taken to that role and locked it down. Kool-Aid McKinstry, I think, held up well in this game, didn't get tested much at all. And we still feel pretty good about him, but the jury's still out. That's a position group we're going to find out a lot about, starting with the matchup against Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua.
Mm-hmm.
But those would be the only two. I mean, I guess you could make a case for offensive tackle now with all the love Trevor Penning's getting and Talifaga having a good rookie year. But to me, that's still not solidified. It still could be a position that you think about taking with your number one pick next year.
I think for future success, I have to go with the linebackers. And that's a tough choice. But I feel like you take DeMario out, you still have Pete, who, I mean, he's dealt with injuries, but he's still relatively young.
Yeah.
Willie Gay, I don't know how long term he's going to be here, but he's young and he's explosive. And then you see guys like Orgy and Jackson get some play during the season and have some real run. You
only play 2 every week for the most part, and one of them is locked down on a long-term deal, and that's Pete Werner. So it's not my most glaring liability, but it's a shame that eventually Demario Davis is going to turn 53 years old or something like that.
Yeah, I know he said he wants to keep up with LeBron, but I mean, LeBron has Bronny in there now, so now I don't know what the determining factor of keeping LeBron in for so long, but man, just to see, not to go on a tangent about LeBron, but just, man, he's Father Time and him, they're beefed out because he just beat them all the time. But you brought up the secondary. You brought up how Paulson actually looked like he was on the outside looking back in after, this season, but now that he's hurt. You brought it up a couple of shows ago. What are the implications with Paulson when he comes back?
I think they still value him, and I think if that forces him to take a cheaper prove-it deal or not max out in free agency like he might have, I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him come back and be sort of the veteran alongside Taylor and McKinstry. That actually makes a lot of sense to me, unless some team, a lot of teams have a lot of money to spend. We talk about the cap all the time, and the Saints are the one team that's like this big joke because they're like $80 million over the cap, and everyone else is like $150 million under the cap. And it's like at some point those teams are going to have to start spending it all because the cap keeps going up by $25 million every year. So, maybe some team is just like, here's $20 million a year. We got to spend it somewhere. He could get priced out of here, but I feel like he could be affordable, and I think he's valued here still. So.
We didn't mention running back. Alvin is pinned in. Just signed his new contract.
Look, Alvin's incredible. If we were talking about the end of this season, I would say Alvin. But, I mean, in theory, even though he's working with Dr. JT over there, in theory, one of these days when he's 30 or 31, that becomes a question mark. They're definitely going to have to draft that position next year, no doubt about it.
And that was going to go into, does Miller get handed the reins, or do they explore another
Handed
option?
No. Handed no. He's got to earn something. Look, he gets a fresh start under Darren Rizzi, and that could be refreshing for him, even though I'm sure the whole coaching staff had a say in being down on him, and it wasn't just Dennis Allen, but it seemed like Dennis Allen was trying to make a point through him, and now Dennis Allen is out of here, so that gives him a chance to make a strong impression at the end of this season when he comes back off of IR, but we haven't seen him do it yet.
That'll take us into our next segment, continuing to talk about the future. What is the biggest draw for a future head coach candidate?
Look, we're not going to sugarcoat this. The Saints are going to be low on that list. If you're ranking the best situations, they have an older roster. Half of their top 10 players are not going to be around here for another year or two. They already just traded away Marshawn Lattimore. Derek Carr's salary makes him a question mark. Do you want him at quarterback for $40 million next year, and $50 million the year after that? Or do you have to start over at quarterback? Their salary cap issue. Like, all those things make this a tough draw, but not like no one's going to touch it. I mean, the top 8 coaching candidates are going to want to take the 8 jobs that are available this year, or whatever it turns out to be. Maybe it'll be 10. The Saints could probably get their number 2 or number 3 choice on the list. Maybe their number 1 choice on the list, depending on what they're seeking. There's only a couple of guys like Mike Vrabel and Ben Johnson who might have their choice of every team in the league and can turn down one they're not interested in. And they're such different candidates that maybe the Saints won't even want one of those guys. So they're going to get a good coach. And like I said, I just wrote this story where I talked to the players in the locker room about how much they value the culture. Demario Davis would not I tried to lead him down. He used to play for the Jets and the Browns.
Yeah.
And he goes, I'm not going to talk about any other organizations. But he said, you see other organizations that are constantly rebuilding, and they never win. They never go to the playoffs.
No.
All they do is rebuild for decades. And he said, here, it's a surprise when we don't make the playoffs. And now look, that wasn't always the case in New Orleans, but since DeMario Davis came here and he was like, oh, he went from the Jets and the Browns to coming here in 2018 and being like, this is a place that values winning. And that's how he's felt about it for 7 years. And this stubborn refusal that they have to fire coaches, it took forever before they fired Dennis Allen. We're looking at the Jets and all these stories coming about how Woody Johnson is micromanaging and not letting the GM or the head coach do their jobs, and they've both been fired. We're looking at the Panthers firing their head coach almost annually.
Yeah.
The Raiders is a place no one's ever wanted to go to coach because of the instability. There's, the Jerry Jones factor of Dallas. You don't get that here.
No.
You come here and you feel like they're going to give me time, patience, resources, and everything I need to win. I mean, even with Dennis Allen, in year 2, they gave him Derek Carr. In year 3, they gave him Clint Kubiak, and they kept giving him chances and chances, and they keep spending money, and they refuse to rebuild here. So I do think some of that patience will be attractive to a coach.
No, for sure. And I do. That was one of my main points, the fact that there's a ready-made quarterback, and with that comes stability, because you don't have to worry about, even though it's not the guy you might have chosen, you still have a guy who knows the league. He's been in the league for a long time. He knows how to operate in the locker room and different things like that. And then that sense of stability as an organization of not making a lot of those rash moves just so quick at the turn of, a corner. And then even the firing of Dennis Allen, the way that was handled, they let him go a long ways throughout the season. Of course, organizations, well, it seems like, I don't know what the Jets got going on up there, but it seems like they don't just follow whatever the fans say, and whenever they come with the pitchforks and the flame torches that they make a move. But look, the Saints, they evaluated everything. There's an article that we have detailing, what led up to DAs being let go and different things like that, and how it was a temp check in the locker room to see kind of like how all of that was happening before that move was made. So I think having a ready-made quarterback in Derek Carr, veteran leadership on the defense between DeMario, Tyron, some of the best people in the league as a whole. Of course, not long-term solutions, but you're not coming in having to coach college kids, you know what I mean, in a certain sense, as your cornerstones of the organization and leaders. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Makes sense.
Now it's time for the Martin Wine and Spirits question of the day. Martin's is home to a wide selection of hand-picked barrel select bourbon, whiskeys, and more. Martin's so much more than just wine. Going back to the secondary, any thoughts on Alontae moving back inside to finish out the season?
It's a very fair question. Taylor, I think we thought was arguably the team MVP or the defensive MVP, with Alvin being the offensive MVP. For much of the year, while he was really taking to that inside role more than ever and making plays there. And then we've seen him move outside, and he's not making plays, and he's really kind of struggled in the last 2 games, or at least had some really low moments in the last 2 games with either penalties or getting beat deep. So I guess if you're short-term thinking and like you have to win a game this week, it could be something you consider. But as much as the Saints are still trying to win, I think they probably should also be evaluating him in that outside role for the rest of this year. We said for years, Nick in his film studies said for years that, man, he just looks like he's better on the outside, better equipped to be an outside corner. He wants to be an outside corner. As soon as they traded Marshawn, he embraced the idea, like, now this is a job I can own and prove that I can handle for years to come. He wants to be the number 1 outside corner on this team. And so I think it would be smart to evaluate him in that role for the rest of the year and figure out going into the offseason what he is, instead of just giving up on it so quickly. But it's a fair question to ask, especially now that Kool-Aid's healthy and Shamar Jean-Charles could play on the outside. Alontae could play on the inside. It's not like Ugo Amadi is killing it on the inside right now. Fair question, something they may discuss and consider. But I think it would be, first of all, I think Taylor can learn from these early mistakes and thrive on the outside.
Right.
So it's not like putting Spencer Rattler in at quarterback over Derek Carr and just saying, hey, it's all about the future. I think you could also win with Alontae Taylor on the outside, but I think evaluating him is really important.
No, and that's definitely where my mindset went, especially like 2 weeks ago in his first start outside against Atlanta. I was like, man, look, heavy is the head that wears the crown. You're number one. You have no safety blanket behind you. There is no, oh, well, Marshawn is going to come back from injury and take this over while you do your thing in 3 to 4 games. This is you now. You are that guy.
Yeah.
And he acknowledged it. He acknowledged it in his the first week after the Marshawn trade. He was like, look, Marshawn taught me a lot. He's gone. Now it's my time to show that I am number one. So I think just continuing to get reps, continue to hone in on the mistakes and try to fix those. I mean, you have the bye week to try to iron some of those out. Plus, you have leadership back there who's been around top-tier talent. Like, you have Tyron. You have Tyron who's been around top-tier cornerback talent that can help you develop as the top option in the secondary. So I really do think Alontae, it'd be too quick to pull the plug on him starting on the outside, but we'll have to see what happens. That'll do it for this edition of NewOrleans.Football. We appreciate y'all for stopping in today. Overtime is next. Catch you next time.